We've all heard it from well-meaning friends and family members. You can't get enough protein and iron without eating meat. You can't raise children on a vegan diet. You have to drink cow's milk to get your calcium. Carbs make you fat. These are just a few of the 9 myths I'm going to be covering in this video. All right, let's start with my favorite. Carbs make you fat. This is so misguided because fat, dietary fat, is readily and easily converted into body fat, as opposed to carbohydrates, which only convert into body fat through a process called de novo lipogenesis, which is incredibly inefficient. So it is very rare that your body is going to resort to this mechanism when it comes to providing the energy that you need to function. So humans particularly need regular, heavy amounts of carbohydrates because of our giant brains. That's what we use to fuel our brain, as you know, along with the rest of our body. This is our primary source of energy. It is essential to get various carbohydrates throughout your day. But when I talk about needing carbohydrates, I'm not talking about needing a bunch of simple carbohydrates. I'm talking complex carbohydrates. This is the difference between sugar versus starch and fiber in the complex carbohydrates. So with the simple carbohydrates, you're getting things like obviously refined sugar, but also things that are readily converted into sugar through the metabolic process in the body. So things like non-whole grain pastas and breads and breakfast cereals and all of those things that you will find in the center of the grocery store that are packed full of simple carbohydrates. Now the simple carbohydrates are absorbed very quickly and readily into the system. But when it comes to complex carbohydrates, these are so packed with fiber and other essential nutrients that they are absorbed and taken in very slow and regulated. Huge difference. You want to make sure you're getting your proper amount of complex carbohydrates and steer clear of those simple carbohydrates. Foods highest in carbs are also the most nutritious. People are so misguided on this. With ketogenic diets and paleo diets, it just does not make sense to refrain from eating carbohydrates. Things like fruits and vegetables, obviously the healthiest foods on the planet, have the most carbohydrates, along with the rest of the plant-based food groups, things like nuts, legumes, and whole grains. All of these, all plant foods contain carbs. How can they possibly be bad for us? So make sure you bring that up the next time somebody challenges you about how many carbohydrates you're eating. This is a fan favorite. Where are you going to get your protein? Obviously, I'm going to get it from the plants I eat, since all plants contain protein, but not only that, all protein comes from plants originally. We just cut out the middleman when we don't eat the meat. Animals cannot convert the nitrogen needed to make those essential amino acids because we don't have the proper mechanisms for photosynthesis. Where do you think the cows that you're eating get their protein? From the grass that they're grazing on all day long. Protein is abundant in plants. Things like nuts, seeds, even quinoa, oats, vegetables, and tiny amounts can even be found in fruit. So no matter what you're consuming on a plant-based diet, you are getting plenty of protein. Research shows that vegans get more than enough protein than the recommended daily amount. So there's no need to be concerned about this. What people should be worrying about is where they're getting their fiber, or if they're getting enough fiber. On a plant-based diet, you're going to be getting plenty of this. However, on a carnivorous diet, it is very difficult to get enough fiber. So make sure that's your retort the next time somebody asks you where you get your protein. Well, where do you get your fiber? Number 3 is kind of goofy. So soy causes cancer or man-boobs. I can kind of understand where people are getting this misconception because yes, the 1950s version of this is very much so that soy causes cancer because there is such a thing as phytoestrogens that are produced by the soy. And these do latch on to your estrogen receptors. However, this is a benefit because they block and help to regulate excess estrogen that's floating around freely in the blood. These actually reduce your risks of things like prostate and breast cancer. Also, countries with the lowest rates of breast and prostate cancer can be found in those countries that eat the most soy products. Go figure. So if you're not a huge fan of tofu or tempeh or soy milk, then just go ahead and eat the soybean or the edamame, the baby soybean, and you will get all those wonderful benefits of the phytoestrogens without eating the more processed varieties. especially for women who have really heavy or difficult periods, or women who are going through menopause and experiencing some really uncomfortable side effects. I highly recommend getting your daily doses of soy. I believe at least 3 servings of soy is recommended per day for these particular women, and for people who have these higher risks of breast or prostate cancer. Oh, and the man boobs thing. Have you ever seen a man with a little excess fat in his chest area who is eating a bunch of tofu? I haven't. So let me know if I'm way off on this one, because I could definitely be wrong, but I'm pretty sure the majority of men I know that are a little heavy set and have those moobs are not gaining them from eating too much tofu. If you're enjoying this video so far, make sure you give it a like. I've got 5 more to go. All right, let's talk about iron, because this one was particularly confusing to me. When I got pregnant, and my family was super concerned that I was planning on raising my child vegan because they would be iron deficient. And another instance I had was when I dropped my child off at daycare. The daycare provider asked me if the doctor requires that I give my child an iron supplement. And I was baffled, like, why? Why would my baby need extra iron? So by the time I got in the car, I finally realized, oh, it's because she's vegan. She doesn't eat meat. I completely forget about these paradigms and these misconceptions that the general population has. So again, all iron originally comes from plants. It's a mineral. It comes from the ground. If you're going to get it, you might as well eat it straight from the source instead of eating the animal that ate it from the source, and then you're indirectly getting that iron through the animal that also contains all those environmental toxins and all that other jazz. Getting iron from plants is going to be packaged in a much healthier option as opposed to the animal version. So researchers used to believe that the heme iron that comes from animal products is more beneficial to human health than the non-heme iron that comes from plants. However, this is not considered to be factual any longer. Yes, heme iron is more readily absorbed and taken into the body. However, this is not necessarily a good thing. Iron is highly oxidative. It's a pro-oxidant. You don't want too much iron in your blood, just as much as you don't want too little. There's a very fine balance that we have to maintain. So what non-heme iron does is it comes into the bloodstream and it's very, very regulated and slowly taken in to our bodies, as opposed to that rapid introduction from the heme iron. The slower absorption is due to all the fiber and the nutrients found in these foods. The package that these plants come in is much more conducive to health and slow uptake of the iron absorption than the heme iron sources. Meat eaters also have similar iron deficiency levels as non-meat eaters. So there's really no need to concern yourself with getting enough iron on a vegan or plant-based diet. The highest sources of iron are actually leafy greens. You can also find them in things like beans, lentils, flax seeds, potatoes, oats, and cashews. All sorts of different plants contain iron. There's really no need to go out of your way to make sure you're getting enough of this on a plant-based diet. As long as you're getting a variety of whole natural foods, you don't have to worry about getting enough iron or taking supplements or anything like that. However, I will mention that I had to take some iron for about 3 weeks when I first got pregnant because I was a little low. But that is very, very common for newly pregnant women because of that sudden increase in blood supply. And there may be other individuals that suffer from iron absorption to begin with. So these are people that need to concern themselves with iron supplementation, not the general population. But speak to your doctor if you have any concerns and get your iron levels checked regularly. You have to drink cow's milk to get your calcium. This has been pushed on us since we were children. Remember that little milk cart that they would roll out during snack time or during lunchtime, and all of these different assortments of milk would be available to us, especially the chocolate milk. Ugh. I've not been able to drink milk my entire life. It literally makes me gag. The smell of it just repulses me. So I am very fortunate in that aspect. But again, all calcium comes from plants. It's a mineral. It comes from the ground. We don't have to eat the animals that ate the plants to get the calcium. We can just go straight to the plants. But I'm sure it's pretty obvious that the milk industries would rather we go on thinking that we need to drink their products to get an essential nutrient. Why on earth would humans need to drink another species' milk to get their nutrition? It's not only baffling, but so gross, you guys. So gross. Drinking another animal's lactation fluid just makes me so confused for our species. Meat eaters actually tend to have more problems with bone fractures and osteoporosis because of the high acidity in these foods. When your blood pH has too much acid, it needs to pull calcium from the bones to neutralize that acidity and alkalinize the blood. So you don't want to be putting too much animal protein in your system. Some great sources of plant-based calcium are things like almonds, oranges, beans, lentils, sesame seeds, oats, amaranth, teff, again, leafy greens, and broccoli. You can get calcium from a variety of wholesome plant foods. There's no need to go out of your way to make sure you're getting this on a regular basis, regardless of the stage in life you're at. Yes, some individuals need more calcium than others, like developing children and the elderly, or people who are suffering from these unfortunate diseases like osteoporosis or osteopenia. But the general population does not need to concern themselves with these things. Being a mother, this one is very near and dear to my heart. The myth that you should not have a vegan pregnancy or raise a vegan baby is very detrimental to our society and really needs to be addressed. There are so many benefits to having a vegan pregnancy and raising vegan children. Many people have developed this way and they are thriving. There is absolutely no reason to condemn people who decide to go this direction with their pregnancy. Or if they later on decide that the evidence is there and they need to transition their children as soon as possible. They should be supported, not persecuted. In my experience, I got a lot of pushback, not only from friends, but from family members on how I was supposed to be raising and building my child while it was still inside of me. But do your own research. The PCRM has great information on this, and there's plenty of research evidence out there if you want to Google something on PubMed or the Cochrane Review or whatnot to get it straight from the source. But scientific journals can be really confusing to read and interpret, so you might want to go to the PCRM or Dr. Greger's site, the nutritionfacts.org. Those are very straightforward when it comes to information on vegan pregnancies and raising vegan children. Having a vegan pregnancy or raising your child vegan actually reduces risk for things like obesity and diabetes, cancer, developmental issues, etc. All of those chronic illnesses that most Americans suffer from in their later years. Your child will likely never have to deal with these issues because of how well you informed yourself prior to pregnancy. There's also wonderful benefits for the mother, like having lower amounts of gestational weight and less pregnancy, labor, and delivery complications, among other things. Do your research, look into it before you make a decision about how you're going to raise your child. My baby girl is thriving. She has never had to take an antibiotic. She's 2.5 years old now, and she rarely gets sick, and when she does, she takes it like a champ. We've only had to give her ibuprofen twice for fevers, but other than that, she is just thriving. But obviously that's very anecdotal. I often get her blood tested, and she has always been in very healthy ranges for her nutrients. So if you have any doubts, just get your child tested. And yes, they may hate you for all the needles that they have to endure, but it's worth it for your reassurance that your child is growing properly. The next myth I want to expose is that eating plant-based is more expensive. Now, this may be true if you're eating a bunch of those vegan analogs, like the processed vegan cheeses and vegan yogurts and vegan meats. Like, those are super bad for you and really expensive. So yes, it can be expensive on a plant-based diet if you're doing it the wrong way. If you're trying to mimic your old diet that used to consume a lot of the standard American foods, then yes, this is going to be more expensive and probably just as harmful to your health. But if you convert yourself to these whole natural foods, to a healthy plant-based diet, then I assure you, these are some of the cheapest foods in the grocery store. Meat and dairy, those are actually some of the most expensive, and they'd be even more expensive if they weren't subsidized by our government. So things like beans and squash and potatoes and rice, these are the cheapest staples in the grocery store, and you will eat them in abundance on this diet. The beans, these are literally like 89 cents, and this will feed me for an entire week. I spend about $150 a week on my family of 3 in the grocery store. The studies show that it actually comes out to about the same amount of money spent on each type of diet. But if you focus on the Clean 15 and the Dirty Dozen when it comes to your produce, if you're not familiar with that, check out the environmental working groups, Clean 15 and Dirty Dozen, because this will show you the 15 types of produce that season that has the least amount of herbicide and pesticide residue, and then the highest amounts in the Dirty Dozen. So that will help you navigate what foods you're going to buy organic and what foods you can kind of get away with not buying organic. That is the most expensive thing I buy in the grocery store, is the organic produce. And you do have to replenish this regularly. That's why this diet can be a little pricey. But you don't necessarily have to eat organic. Yes, it's obviously more beneficial to your health, but it's so much better to eat the fruits and vegetables with the pesticide residue, just, wash them off very carefully first, obviously, than it is to not eat the food at all. Okay, this is kind of a goofy one. Vegans don't get sick, or plant-based folks don't get sick. This is and is not true. Yes, obviously we get sick, but when it comes to the severity and the duration of the illness, much, much, much less severe than had we been eating the standard American fare. So these diets, the plant-based foods, contain a ton of vitamin C, zinc, and anti-inflammatory compounds. These are all things that are going to help your body fight off these bacteria and these viruses and these different illnesses that you will inevitably encounter living in a society of any kind. I honestly can't remember the last time I was sick, but I'm pretty sure I got the coronavirus when it first came out in 2020 in like February, March. I had it pretty severe, but not severe enough where I had to go to the hospital or anything. And honestly, I never actually was tested, so I'm not 100%, but I had never experienced a sickness like that before in my life, with the weird sensory problems and the headaches and the fever and the sweating. It was just horrendous. So I'm very grateful for my plant-based diet, because I feel like it would have been much, much worse had I been eating other foods. But I didn't have like the heavy breathing problems, so they didn't allow me to come to the doctors and get tested. So I'll never know. But beyond that, I can't remember the last time I was sick. And I can't think of anything more important than holding on to your health during our busy lifestyles. Not many people can afford to take off work, especially when they have a toddler. So eat your veggies. People on a plant-based diet are always hungry. This one is hilarious. I am literally more satiated now than I've ever experienced in my life. I'm 35. That should say something. Let's talk about potatoes for a second. This researcher took a ton of data on the different types of foods that make each individual feel the most full or the most satiated. So what food came out on top? Not the heavy protein-laden foods like the animal products that you're thinking of, most likely, but the potato. The regular russet, like 20 cents a pound or something potato. Beans were a close second. So these complex carbohydrates that I was referring to in the first myth that I dispelled, or I hope I dispelled, these foods are going to keep you full the longest because of the rate at which they are broken down and absorbed into the body. You also eat more. You get to eat more on a plant-based diet because these foods are also low in calories. As long as you stay away from like the plant-based oils, which are, not really whole food to begin with. They're very heavily processed and stripped of all their nutrition. And the nuts and avocados and things of that nature are very high in calories. But for the most part, these foods are incredibly low in calories, so you have to eat in abundance. Most people who eat whole food, plant-based, also only eat 2 meals per day. This is because these foods are so filling. We don't feel a need to eat a third meal, and if we do, it's typically very minimal. So take it from my weight loss clients. This is not a diet of deprivation. This is a diet of abundance. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Make sure you leave any myths that I forgot down in the description box, and I'm sure there will be plenty of discussion. So I will see you guys in the next video.